Thank you very much for having me, Phil. I grew up in a socially acceptable Australia in the sense that my drinking habits were very socially acceptable. In that, from my late teens onwards, I would have a few beers most nights of the week, maybe half a bottle of wine to a bottle of wine. I got drunk on weekends with friends. And then as I got into my late 20s and early 30s, I didn't so much get drunk on the weekends, but I kept the habit of drinking half a bottle of wine a night or a few drinks. And that was just the norm. That was just normal behavior. I didn't get arrested. I didn't get a DUI. I didn't wake up in a ditch. But I got to age 35 and I realized, wow, I've put on about 30 pounds here. I'm irritable, stressed, I'm envious, I'm not sleeping well. I'm just blah. I'm like a 5 or a 6 out of 10. And in 2010, after an almost 20-year drinking career, I decided to quit drinking. And I thought I'd quit drinking for 30 days, and it's been 15 years and counting now. And now my life's work is really to support high achievers to have a better relationship with alcohol, at least, and at best, quit drinking entirely, like I have. Yeah, well, social conditioning has us believe that drinking is necessary for bonding, it's necessary to create romance, it's necessary to relieve stress and anxiety, to celebrate. I submit that you can create romance and reduce stress and anxiety and commiserate and celebrate without consuming a glass of attractively packaged poison. And so most people have a tough time quitting drinking, not so much because of the physical effects, but because of the psychological effects. They feel like they're going to be ostracized from the tribe if they stop drinking, that people are going to, oh, Phil's an alcoholic. Oh, James must be an alcoholic just because they choose not to drink. And so my work really is to try to rewire that mindset in society and show people that they get to be alcohol free. They get to love being alcohol free and to be proud of it, not sober or being in recovery or being clean, because there's a lot of stigma around that verbiage, but rather I'm choosing to be alcohol free. I get to be, and this is a much preferable lifestyle. And if I can successfully rewire someone's mindset around that, then quitting alcohol becomes very simple and preferable and desirable and fun, as opposed to most people are feeling like they're depriving themselves of something fun and joyful by not drinking. I was in Austin, Texas in 2010. I went out to a bar and I had two gin and tonics, and I went back to my hotel room about 20 minutes outside of downtown Austin, went to sleep. And when I woke up in the morning, I looked in the mirror and I just felt blah. I had fat rolls. I was weathered. I had crow's feet around my eyes. I just didn't look good and I didn't feel good. I went next door to the hotel to an IHOP, an international house of pancakes, and I sat down in the booth and I ordered all you can eat pancakes. And I looked out the window and I thought, what am I doing in an IHOP? What am I doing here? And so that was when I said, enough, James, enough. It's time to change something up. Just try to get to 30 days without alcohol and see if you can feel better. And so that's what I did. I quit drinking. That was my motivation. Initially, I thought I would do it for 30 days. It's now been 15 years. But in those initial 30 days, I lost 13 pounds. My skin improved. I slept better. I became a much nicer, more agreeable person. I wasn't as envious or jealous of other people. That kind of started to fade away. I had clarity, focus, and energy. So much so that an opportunity to audition to become a television host on a TV show called SportsCenter on ESPN presented itself. And to my utter bewilderment, they gave me the job, and I was on air on ESPN 2 weeks later. And I had no television experience before then. And I really credit the clarity and the focus that I had from being alcohol free to contributing to helping me land that job at ESPN. And I just kept going and going. I thought, well, this is pretty good. I'll get to 40 days. Let's see if I can get to 60 to 90 days. And then I got to 1 year. I was back in Austin the following year in 2011, and I walked into the Luster Pearl Bar in Rainey Street in downtown Austin, and I ordered a celebratory beer. And at the last moment, just before I went to drink the beer, something stopped me. And I thought, in 1 year, I've created the body that nature intended me to have. I have this dream career. I've created a great romantic relationship. I've lost the 30 pounds. I feel good. I'm sleeping better. I think I'll just keep going. And I handed the beer back to the waiter, and I haven't so much as picked up a alcoholic drink since. Yeah, I write about this. I write about this in one of the chapters of my book, Clear, which is what is the effect of just one seemingly innocent drink per night? And most people are surprised to learn that the consequence of one drink a night is pretty profound. Because one seemingly innocent drink a night is enough to compromise your sleep quality. And having your sleep be compromised leads to a little bit of irritability in the morning, a little bit of frustration. Instead of operating at, say, an 8 or a 9 out of 10 during the day, you're operating at a 6 or a 7. Then you reach for a sugary food or drink to try to give you a little bit of an energy spike. And then that, of course, leads to an energy crash, which affects your performance. You then put on unwanted body weight, which then compromises your self-confidence. When your self-confidence goes, you can spiral down very quickly into the pit of mediocrity. Not necessarily rock bottom, but mediocrity. And so one drink a night, especially if you're a business owner, if you're an entrepreneur, for example, and you're operating at a 7 out of 10 as a drinker compared to a 9 out of 10 as a non-drinker, that difference can mean $1 million in revenue over the course of a year. When I have prospective clients come to my organization, which is called Alcohol Free Lifestyle, and they're exploring engaging our services to support them in stopping drinking, we often ask them, what do you do? And if they tell us they're an entrepreneur, we go, how much money do you make a year in revenue? And let's just use a hypothetical example. Someone might say, $1 million in revenue. I go, okay. And with your drinking habits, how do you feel? And they say, pretty crappy, foggy, irritable, stressed, don't work as much, 6 out of 10. Okay. And I said, if we could help you stop drinking alcohol and now you had clarity, focus, energy, and you were feeling really good and you made better decisions, you made an additional sales call, or you made it a better sales call, or you increased your conversion rate from prospects to clients, or you were able to market better and you were now feeling at an 8 or a 9 out of 10, how much money do you think you generate in that business? And then they often say double or half again. And I go, okay, so let's just say $500,000 more. Your drinking habits are costing you $500,000 a year. And then there's usually like a penny drop moment where there's some silence and they go, oh, then they say, oh, got it. Yeah. And then I pull out a calculator and I go, let's do $500,000 divided by 365 days of the year. Every day that you drink is costing you $1,369 in revenue you don't generate. And then they go, oh. So financially, the cost of one seemingly innocent drink a night is profound. And that's just one hypothetical. In many other cases, people can get a 5x return from not drinking alcohol. Then in terms of physically, there was a study out of the UK in 2022, and they studied 35,000 middle-aged adults, and they had them drink one drink a night. And what they found was that that was enough to cause some level of brain degeneration. Specifically, it compromised gray and white matter in the brain, which supports brain functionality. So the headline there is one drink a night causes brain damage. That's pretty frightening. So they're just a couple of the consequences before you even get into someone who's drinking incredibly heavy and has been doing so for many years. You've got liver cirrhosis, you've got more likelihood to get cancer, depression, sadness, acid reflux, liver problems, high blood pressure, cholesterol, all kinds of nasty effects. That if you just removed the alcohol, all those things would either fade away completely or they'd just, they'd be reduced in quantity and severity. First one is that quitting drinking will be hard, and there's a lot of resistance around that. So they just don't do it. And the second thing is that they'll be dull and boring if they stop drinking. Or another way of saying that is that they'll be a completely different person. It's like an identity threat because people have only ever known me as this person, the drinker, or this person, the good time, or this person, the romantic, or the seducer. And if I stop drinking, that threatens the identity that I have of myself and the identity that others have of me. So it's this loss of self. I've only ever known me as a drinker. Who the heck am I going to be as a non-drinker? That seems too scary. I'm not even going to attempt this. I'll just take what feels like the easier option in the moment, which is just continue with the status quo, which is continue to drink. The whole thing, like I'll be dull and boring, is a complete nonsense. I get that fear, but the reality is that you actually become more fun. You have more fun. You experience more joy. You attract a much more engaged, higher caliber type of acquaintance or friend or ally into your life. That was my experience, certainly. Uh, Life just gets better, feels better in every way. But, it's scary. Change feels scary. And then most people think that stopping drinking is deprivation and that quitting drinking will be hard and that they'll feel like a prisoner. They wish they could drink, but they can't. So they feel like they're in a prison. And what do all prisoners want to do? They want to break out of prison, right? So then when they're quitting drinking or they're trying to be alcohol free, it feels like they're white knuckling it. And so there's this pressure building and building and building. And it's just a matter of when, like how long can I go before I release that pressure and drink again and go, which is why a lot of these 30-day challenges don't work or they're ineffective, like dry January, sober October, dry July. They're ineffective for long-term alcohol freedom because people go into it with deprivation. They experience deprivation. I wish I could drink, but I can't. Or I'm happy not to drink these 30 days, but I also can't wait until day 30 when I can drink again. And again, the mindset there is not drinking is hard and is deprivation and drinking is fun. I submit it's the other way around. Drinking is hard and painful, and not drinking is fun and joyful and freedom. When I was 17, I started off as a copy boy at a newspaper back in my hometown of Brisbane, Australia. That was like the lowest run on the ladder, so to speak, in the journalism world. And so I learned how to be a journalist. I was a cadet journalist. And every day I would present myself to the chief of staff, and he would give me two or three stories that I had to go out and pursue that day. And so what I learned in those 3 years as a cadet journalist was you have to get comfortable with rejection. You got to get comfortable with trying to speak to someone and having them say no, or them or not being able to reach them in the first place. So I just trained that muscle of try and fail until I succeeded. And so as that showed up later on in life, as you referenced in 2007, it was like, I'll try running a PR company. I'll try it. And then later on, it was, I'll try moving to Los Angeles, California. I'll try being a television host. I'll try uh, starting an e-commerce business. Started an e-commerce business called Swanwick Sleep, and we produce these blue light blocking glasses. I didn't know anything about running an e-commerce business, so I wouldn't say I wasn't afraid to fail. I was always afraid to fail, but I didn't let that fear keep me stuck like a deer in headlights. I just crossed the road anyway, and sometimes I ended up as roadkill, but other times I got to the other side of the road and then into the woods, and was running through the woods loving life. So I think fear is always going to be there. I've always had fear, but I just don't let it stop me most of the time. Sometimes I let it stop me, but I regret those times, but most times I don't let it stop me. I just take the action anyway. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of nature versus nurture, isn't it? Or nature and nurture. How much of our life is just it's natural in us, and how much of it is, it was nurtured into us. I think it's a little bit of both. I was fortunate. I grew up in a middle class background in Brisbane, Australia. I had two loving parents. My parents sent me to a private school, but then I was the only son that they could afford to send to a private school. My two younger brothers went to a public school. I don't think my education at the private school was any better than what my brothers got at the public, incidentally. But I was fortunate. I had loving parents who instilled morals and values in me. And then I was fortunate enough to apply to become a journalist. And I knew someone at the newspaper, and I kind of had enough social guile, so to speak, to use that connection to get a foot in the door. And then after that, I had great coaches and mentors coach me along the way, not just in journalism, that was one skill set, but in people in general. I mean, I would submit I'm probably naturally introvert, but I managed to either knock that out of me, or I allow my extrovert nature to come through. um and or maybe actually, now that I'm saying that out loud, maybe the extrovert nature I had to learn, maybe that was nurtured into me, right? And then later on in life, what I found is that I've never been afraid to hire mentors and consultants and experts, people who have already accomplished what it is that I desire to accomplish. And in most cases, it's someone who's 10 years further along than I am. Uh, and that's really, if I just get 1% improvement from paying a mentor to mentor me for 1 year, that 1% can have profound impacts in my health, wealth, love, and happiness. And so I think it's also surrendering to this idea that I don't have all the answers, which is obvious, obviously, but uh, taking the mentality that I am always a student. I'm always, always, always a student, and I'm willing to pay. mentor to coach me on that, to give me 1%. Sometimes I get a 50% improvement or a 5%, but I'm willing to pay for 1%, and knowing if I do that enough, that's gonna have a compound effect of giving me what I desire in this world. I went into business with my youngest brother, Tristan, in 2015. I had this idea for a pair of stylish blue blockers. The blue blockers on the market at that time were very unsightly, ugly even. And I had this idea to create a cool pair of blue blockers. And I phoned up my brother who was in Brisbane, Australia. I was in Los Angeles, California. And I said, I got this idea. Do you want to start a business with me? You source the glasses from China or wherever, and I'll do the marketing and we'll work together. And, for the first year, we worked very well together. We did $1 million in sales in our first year, just kind of like boomed right from the beginning. And then as we went along, there was some, healthy friction. And then as we went along, there was some unhealthy friction. There was some kind of big brother, little brother energy. You're dealing with family. Someone asked me now, is it a good idea to work with family? I would probably still say yes, but with caution. And I think if we were to do it again, we'd definitely do it differently. But I have to say that it actually worked out great for both of us because it's afforded us a great lifestyle for 10 years. We've learned new skills. It's brought he and I closer together, even though there's still some real family dynamics that play out where I get easily triggered by him and he gets easily triggered by me. Um, I'm I'm happy to not be as involved in that business now as I once was. So I think there are pros and cons. I can't definitively say to you it was a smashing success working with family, nor can I say it was a horrendous failure. I'm still kind of maybe down the middle, and I think it's just has to be a case by case basis. What I would say is that communication is key. It's the key with anything, obviously, but creating context and what I think we could have done better in hindsight is from day one, we could have said, listen, we're going to have friction. There's going to be arguments. Let's put in place a document which outlines how we're going to handle those conflicts when they arise. That's probably the one thing we didn't do, which I would have done differently and which I would definitely do in the future in any business. When? If I feel like I'm the smartest person in the room, then I'm in the wrong room. I want to feel like I'm one of the dumbest people in the room. Then I'm definitely in the right room. Now, I can feel good about being the smartest person in the room because it's easy, it's comfortable, and it's kind of good for the ego a little bit because people are looking up to you. And I can't deny that I like that. But am I really growing in that room? And I would submit in most cases, not much, if at all. So I like being in rooms with people that are much more experienced than me. I think smart and dumb is probably the wrong words. It's probably just like people who are more experienced than me in that field. So I like that. And I think I just think it goes back to what I was saying earlier. Like, I use the acronym ABL, always be learning, and I just like being a student. Like, it interests me. I'm fascinated by it. In 2024, my family and I went to Cambridge in the UK, and I went and studied for 2 weeks at the University of Cambridge on topics that I knew nothing about, social psychology and then valuating businesses. And I was like, that was interesting. And that was fun. And that was like a destination trip to go and learn. A couple of years ago, I signed up to learn about art history at Sotheby's and Christie's. I knew nothing about art, nothing. But I just signed up just to try it, just to do something different, see what it would be like. I flew to London to do the Christie's, and I flew to New York to do the Christie's as well. I did a Sotheby's course online, and now I know something about art which I didn't know before. So that's kind of what I mean. It's like, just try to be a student, be curious, and that's very enjoyable and helps me grow. Curiosity would be the overarching feeling for me. Like, I'm just curious. I like learning. And I know a lot of people are curious and they like learning, but they're not willing to put themselves in a room where they feel like they know the least. But I've been in those rooms and I get it. It feels awful. I remember moving to Buenos Aires, Argentina in 2009 with the specific goal of learning Spanish. And I remember I signed up to this 3 month, once a day Spanish class. And I got to day 5 at lunchtime and I just couldn't get it. I didn't get it. There were other students in the class who were getting it. I thought I was the dumbest person in the room. I couldn't get it. I just felt so overwhelmed that I ended up quitting. I walked out and I quit. And as I was walking home, I was filled with self loathing as well. Like, you're so dumb. You're not smart enough. Other people can get it. You can't get it. And I hated it. It was so uncomfortable to the point where I couldn't set forth. Um, I couldn't set foot in another Spanish class for, I think, another year or so, when I finally did so again at Medellin, Colombia. But I made sure that when I did the next time, it was as a one-on-one student, not amongst other people. So I get it. I get it. And when I do that, especially if I go into an area where there's no exam, like you're not being tested, but rather you're just learning for fun, then I can relieve that pressure that I may have created in my life and just enjoy it because I'm not being graded on it. I'm not being marked on it. I don't have to know the knowledge. I can just relax into, this is enjoyable, and I learn what I learn and I don't learn what I don't learn. The first book, the 30-day no alcohol challenge, was really something that I just threw together and sort of produced in weeks. And I really designed it with the purpose of it being a lead funnel for my quit drinking services. And so, I put time and effort into it, but it was always designed to be quite a small and, trying to pack a punch, but in a very small book. And so I created it, put it out there, and it did very well. And it served its purpose. But in terms of pride, I didn't feel much pride about it because I didn't really put that much time and effort into it compared to what I could have done. With the second book, Clear, that was a year. In fact, it was more than a year, uh, because in 2019, I wrote a book proposal, engaged a literary agent, and I worked with the literary agent for months to try to get this book proposal done. I couldn't believe how much time I had to spend on a damn book proposal, not the book, but a book proposal. And then I wrote the damn thing. And then during the pandemic in 2020, the literary agent and I took it to 16 different publishers and they all said no. And I was surprised because I thought there was a real market for that. But anyway, it sat on the shelf for 4 years. And then this month, 1 year ago, I was talking to who would become my co author in this book, told him about it. And he said, "How about I help you finish it and publish it and market it?" And I said, "Great." So I paid him money to essentially hold me accountable to complete writing the book. And the end product is essentially 75% of me writing it and 25% of him co-writing it. And then all the things that I hate doing, like citations and the index and the graphics and the design, I've left to him, which freed me up to just focus on the content and the the essence of the book, the flavor of it, the feel of it, and now the marketing of it. So, you and I are having a discussion now on your podcast. This is very much part of the marketing of that book because I'm getting an opportunity to share about it. I enjoy talking about it. I didn't particularly enjoy the writing part of it. It was something kind of felt like I had to do as opposed to I got to do. Um, and I really did need a partner to really see it through to fruition. If I had just done it on my own, I'd still be writing it, still trying to figure it out, be fumbling in the dark, so to speak. So partnering with someone, incentivizing that person in terms of paying them up front and then giving them some kind of incentive on the back end based on sales has really been something that has pushed the book forward. It was an energy drip in my mind. I would just think, oh yeah, the book, the book, the book. And I just kept kicking the can down the road, much like many of people do with drinking, right? They kick the can down the road. So I was guilty of doing that as it related to publishing the book. And the universe delivered my co-author, whose name's Daniel De Piazza, and it was a conversation that he and I were having where I was looking to hire him in my business for something completely different. He pitched me. I showed it to my executive team. They declined it. I felt really awkward telling him that we had declined it and we weren't going to be working with him. And then we kind of like spitball a couple of ideas as to how we could work together. And then I mentioned this book and his ears kind of pricked up. And he himself was an almost New York Times bestselling author about a decade earlier. He wrote a book called Rich 20 something. And he expressed much enthusiasm about writing books, marketing books, producing books. And so one thing led to another. We then had another conversation where we kind of flushed it out. He made a proposal. And I thought to myself, this is the way to get this book to come alive now, is to get someone else as more enthusiastic about it maybe than I am in terms of the writing process. And that accountability is what will get this out into the world, creating impact. So that's how it was for me. Other people love writing. I don't particularly love it. This is something I need to do, but I'm very happy with the end product in that people who read it can really help themselves have a better relationship with alcohol as a result. So it's a great thing to put out into the universe if you can get out of your own way and get some support and surrender to the idea that you have to write every single word yourself. I wrote 75% of it, but 25% of it was written by Daniel with my review and approval, of course. Thank you, Phil. Appreciate you having me.